Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. You know, my guest today is Judy Mokowitz. She started playing the piano at the age of 3 by ear and knew that it was her calling. Now, music chose me, she said, and she had no choice and wouldn't change a single thing. I want to welcome this very special singer to the Susan Brender Show.
Hi, Susan.
Well, you know, Judy, you were supposed to be a concert pianist, and you went to Julliard Preparatory School. Now, that's until you heard about Miles Davis recording. I mean, what's that all about?
My career was basically mapped out for me because I had the ability to play by ear and I have perfect pitch. So I was able to play anything and everything by ear at that age of 3. Of course, at that age, it was one hand at a time because I didn't have coordination. And so I did go to Julliard, and I had a career mapped out for me. A teacher wanted to take me to Europe, and I should study the Russian way of playing and all kinds of things. And at a certain time, after practicing and playing classical music, I heard a Miles Davis album. I didn't know who he was. I never knew anything about jazz. And that was it. I just felt, oh my God, what is this fantastic sound? I must play this. I must hear more. And it did not make my family happy. And so I took a very different road. And it wasn't a popular one, but I did. I have no regrets. I am very, very happy that I took the road that I did and play the music that I truly love and respect, and this is America's classical music.
Right. So, Judy, let me ask you this. When you were 3, there must have been somebody in your family or somebody else who had some kind of talent as well. So is that how you think you had this gift?
Well, the piano was there before I was born. And my older sister started to play and took some lessons, was very, very shy, and just gave up on it right away. The piano was just sitting there like a piece of furniture. And as the story goes, I went over to the piano one day, could barely reach the keys, and started to play whatever I heard. And my mother immediately started screaming and carrying on, and then the lessons started, but I was really too young to take lessons. But I did have teachers that, tried to show me little things, but I had to wait several years until I knew how to read. And so that's how it all started.
Right. Now, your parents, you said, certainly didn't encourage you to be a jazz musician or a musician at all. And I know that most parents would say, well, how are you going to find a job? How are you going to exist? But once they heard you and they recognized that you had this talent, did they start to encourage you?
Well, my mother actually encouraged me from the beginning. She was the one that really took charge. And she unfortunately did become a stage mother. So I really didn't have much choice at that very young age, and was only exposed to the music that I was exposed to at Julliard, which was classical music. Mm-hmm. And yes, she wanted me to be a concert pianist.
Let's talk about Julliard for a moment, because Julliard is one of the famous schools that really train people to be musicians and actors and people like that. So who were you exposed to at Julliard that really had an influence on you?
No one.
Really?
That is right. I was doing what I was told by rote. I was just following instructions. It isn't that I didn't love the environment and didn't love being in Julliard. I was very young. I did not have a childhood. I did not go out and play with other children. I had no real friends. I practiced piano, and I played what I was told to play, and was graded on my lessons and on theory, and it was expected of me to get an A+ every time.
Wow.
And, excuse me, the time that I only got an A was when my mother slapped me across my face.
No.
And I then knew I could never continue.
Yeah. Well, something, it's very interesting that you were in a situation that had so much to give you, but why? I mean, let's talk about your family for a moment. Were they that strict? I mean, it sounds like your mother, for some reason, felt that an A was so important. Was it important to you?
What was important to me was to play music. What was important to her is to make her happy. I was the one that was supposed to make her happy, to fulfill her life and her dreams. And that did not make me happy. So I did rebel. There's no question about it. I didn't rebel for the sake of rebelling. But when I was exposed to other music, I knew right then and there that was it. That was where I truly belonged. And I don't think I would have been a great classical pianist, because at a very, very early age, I wanted to rewrite Mozart, and my teachers would yell at me and say, "You can't play that note." And I said, "Well, it sounds better." No. So I know where I belonged.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about jazz. Jazz is a form of music that can be improvised. It can be done in so many different ways. Now, when you kind of play a sound and a note and you do your rhythm, is it very difficult? And in fact, is it more difficult than classical?
It's different. In classical, you play the written note. It is up to some interpretation, but you do not change notes. You play as written. In jazz, it is instant composition. So while you may play the head of a song, you may start it at the bridge of a song. You are free to express yourself in a much more, I think, creative way. There's another thing. In jazz, if you can't hear it, you cannot play it.
Wait a minute. Explain that to our audience, because if you can't hear it, you can't play it. What does that mean?
It means that if your ears are not trained to hear the improvisation, the notes, the chords in your head, you cannot play it. I mean, I'll give you this analogy. You will see natural dancers who have natural rhythm. They didn't take lessons necessarily. They get on a dance floor and they know how to move. They feel the music. They feel the rhythm. And then you see people go on a dance floor. They are stiff. They cannot move their body. They don't feel the rhythm, and it shows in their body language and how they're moving. So it's that kind of a thing. To play jazz, you need to hear it in your head. You need to hear the music in your head. And of course, if you have, a classical background, it helps. It's not, the all and all be all. But if you have it, certainly helps with your technique. It helps with many things. And today, many jazz musicians have a classical background, but some of the early greats never did study, classical music.
Yeah, and probably they don't even read music.
Many didn't, and I struggled with reading music because I always automatically went to my ear. I didn't think about it. It just happened. And I had to really retrain myself to look at music so that I can learn it correctly and then reinterpret it the way I wanted to reinterpret it.
Very interesting. Now, when did you start playing professionally?
At 16 in New York, I started to play professionally. And my father would drive me to a supper club, a nightclub, whatever it was called at the time in New York, and pick me up at the end of the evening and lied about my age. And that's how it happened. I was not playing jazz at the time. I was just playing background music, supper club music, and that's how it started.
Now, who are some of the jazz artists who are your inspiration? Because there are so many fabulous jazz artists out there.
Yes, there are. I will never say that one is the greatest. I do not believe in that. I believe that everyone brings something great and wonderful to the table in their own way. And there is a new great every second. But I have to say Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, McCoy Tyner, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, the list goes on. But as far as the piano, the first person that really, really I fell in love with the beauty of his chords, his voicings, just magnificent, was Bill Evans, and how he used trio work and how he changed the whole way that we listen and play jazz.
Explain that to our audience.
Well, when you listen to a Bill Evans trio album, you will notice that they are so in sync with each other, and he gives the bass player and the drummer importance, space, time, equal. It isn't just a background of a bass line and that's it. It is exquisite harmony, and he just changed the whole feel, and his rhythmic approach was unique and just brilliant.
You're making it sound like a science more than even an art. Is that the truth?
I would not call it a science, but I can't get into the head of a Bill Evans, but he heard something in his head. And what he heard, he needed to work on and perfect and play. And when he did that, it was so brilliant and so wonderful. Every trio thereafter wanted that kind of space, that kind of feeling, that kind of symbiotic playing together. And it's just magnificent. And Keith Jarrett is another one that definitely came out of that school, and I love his music. And he uses that. It's the same thing. So that's kind of what I love and listen to, and where my head is.
Mm-hmm. there's a saying that when you love music, that it changes your life in so many different ways. So how did it change you?
Oh, well, it changed me forever. It changed me forever because I took different paths. I was a white Jewish girl from Queens who wanted to play with great musicians, but this is African American roots. This is music that came from the church. This is music that came out of a life of struggle. And I have to say that I needed to play with people that I respected, that people that I would get involved with musically. And so, as a result, I played with mostly black musicians, and here I was, this white young woman. It was not very popular. And I have to say that family and friends did not approve of me. And that continued throughout a large part of my life. And what this experience did was it opened up another world to me. And it showed me the way in which we disenfranchise people. And I learned that at such a young age. I knew without anyone telling me, I knew I was right, and I knew they were wrong. And there was no way anyone could influence me otherwise.
Judy, you're a woman. You said you're a white woman from a big city, and and what did it feel like to play with most males? Because are there many jazz musicians that were women that you played with, and if so, who were they?
Well, first let me say there are not many, and were not many female musicians. Now, there are many in jazz. Of course, there have always been female musicians in classical music. In jazz, no. It was really very difficult. Talk about a glass ceiling. Very difficult. Marion McPartland started a Women in Jazz organization, wrote a book, Women in Jazz. I played in this group, and we performed at Lincoln Center Women in Jazz Festival. But there really were not many of us. I do not consider just someone who sings, because singers have always been the ornament for the band. They would come out with the low-cut gown, and they would be pretty and, talented or not. But I'm talking about serious musicians in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And if you look at Downbeat magazine today, and if you look at, a majority of these magazines for musicians, you will find that on their covers and inside it's mostly men. It's a macho music. It's a sexual music. It's a sensual music. And women have always had a very hard time. There are always a few that break through. There are always a few that get recognition. And we live in a visual world. It certainly helps if they are young and pretty and sing. But just to be a female musician in the world of jazz is not easy.
Now, 2 years ago, you started writing poetry from out of the blue with no literary background. Tell us about that, and tell me about your poetry.
Well, this is something that has been now a passion that it just happened. All my life I have been involved in music. I never thought about poetry. I never read poetry. I never cared about poetry. And all of a sudden, 2 years ago, I was with a friend who said, I really think you should write some poetry, and I think you can. And I thought this person was crazy. But I did start. And once I started, I could not stop. I wrote in the bathroom. I have paper by my bedside. I cannot stop. And I have a book that I am working on, my first poetry book, which is called Poetry Through the Soul of a Jazz Musician. And I certainly hope that it's going to be ready by 2016. I'm working on it a long time. And I wrote many poems, but that book is going to be 50 poems, and basically much of it is autobiographical, and some of it is not, but it is my journey. This book is my journey. This book is my take, my view of the world, different parts of my life, political issues, racism, music. I have many musical references in many of my poems. Can't help it. It's got to come through. Mm-hmm. And I write also about my life. I write about my loves and other things. Would you like me to read a poem?
Exactly. I was just going to ask you to.
Well, I just wrote this recently. Now, this is the last poem that I wrote, which was just a few days ago. And this poem is called Mother Love. Oh, how I longed to be touched by you, Mother Love. You couldn't help being yourself. I can't help but remember the absentee mother that never was, Mother Love. The tattoo I want to lose, the guilt of carrying you in my backpack, for hating you, needing you, Mother Love. I want to say something nice, but can't remember you with reverence. I want to remember you once loved me, but can't remember a kiss, a hug. I wanted her mother, his mother, their mother, everyone's mother love, to seal the hole that was punctured so long ago.
Wow. You know, it's very interesting that your generation and mine had the same sort of problem, if you will, mm-hmm. Because I guess that generation of mothers, they were dealing with very different kinds of lives at that time, and today it may be different. In fact, I think it is different. Do you agree?
To some degree, I agree. But, we are all unique. We are all individuals. And I'm going to say from my experience, not everyone should be a mother. My mother should not have been a mother.
Wow. That's pretty profound. And I'm glad that you have admitted that on my show, because it tells me something about Judy. It tells me that you have a very sensual side, a very lovely, wonderful feeling that you give the audience when you read your poetry, and I can imagine what it's like to hear your music. But now let's talk about how important is music and poetry in your life. It sounds like it is, and how, it must be incredible. Now, is this what you do for a living, or is it only a hobby?
Well, it's far more than a hobby. It's a passion. I am, of course, I'm a newbie at this, as far as the poetry goes. But I would not call it a hobby, because I think by calling it a hobby, it's trivializing the importance of this in my life and how serious I am about it. As far as music and poetry, they do go together, because there is a rhythm. And also, when you are an improviser, it just seems natural to have a flow of consciousness, a flow that comes out. And I don't know, it just feels as if it is symbiotic to me.
So what are you trying to convey in your poetry? Because, I get it. Your mother, just as you said, didn't have the skill to be a really good mother, but, there must be other things that you're trying to convey in your poetry.
Oh, my goodness, I do. But it's life. It's life in the raw. I don't think you will need an interpreter to read my poetry. I'm not trying to be clever. I think it's relatable. And I think that's what people like about it. Those that, have read some of my pieces. But I just write about many, many, many things, including love, just many, many areas.
Give us a little poetry about love, because that's a very beautiful thing.
Okay. Sleep with me tonight. I start the sentence that you finish, and gave birth to poetry that night. Sleep with me tonight as I dry your tears, falling upon my breast one drop at a time. Let me be the host to masturbate your mind. Sleep with me tonight as I warm your feet toe to toe with mine, as we take the trip into the inner sanctum where fantasy becomes reality.
Whoa, that's pretty intense. Judy, you are just a master of poetry, even though it's new to you. And I assume that part of it has to do with the fact that you are a musician, because it sings to me, your poetry. Now, I just want to tell you something. Oh, indeed. And so, Charlie Rose, a long time ago, did an interview with, he does many interviews, but he did an interview, and so did Terry Gross, with some musicians. And, let's talk about Terry Gross for a moment. When she interviewed some of the rock singers, she said, they changed their names to very strange names. And she said, why do you change your name from this to that, to this to that? And they said, money. Money. Now, is that one of the things that mean a lot to you, or is it really because you just love what you do?
Well, if I really loved money that much, I'd be making money. Also, I'd never go into jazz.
That's right.
And there's no money in poetry. And most writers are, who write poetry are in academia, and at least they have their, their professors of literature and so forth, and they write a book, but they don't make much money. So for me, it has never been about money. For me, everything that I have done musically and with writing, it is about passion. It is about an art form. And I feel very strongly about, especially in the jazz world, there's so little jazz. Music has changed so much. You don't have the intimate little jazz clubs that we had. So many Now everything is in concert format. And I do think that you lose so much, but it is about money, because tickets cost money, and you can fill a stadium, and it's all about money. And money is what has driven this society to where it is, in my view. Mm-hmm. The greed, and politically, and in every way. So what I do and what I have chosen to do and how I have lived my life, and I hope I have lived my life and am living my life authentically. And what I mean is authentically to me.
So what's the next step in the next chapter of your life?
Mm-hmm. Well, you want to expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So you're getting involved in poetry and you're starting to write a book. Is that the only thing that you're doing, or is there more in store for everybody, based on the fact that you are Judy, and Judy is a very fine musician and a writer, but maybe there's something else in your life that you want to tell us about?
Not really. Not really. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I have wonderful children, and I'm glad that happened to me in my life. I am not married now. I am widowed for 2.5 years. And I am very much at peace in my life at this particular time. So as far as my future is right now. Yeah. My future is right now. I want to just do what gives me pleasure and follow my passions, and I hope that I continue to question everything and continue to follow a path of learning and expanding my horizons musically, poetically, friendships, family. These are all important parts of my life. Money, while it is necessary, it is not the thing that really is the fuel for me. It never has been. So, but my I'm a cancer survivor.
Oh.
And I've been in remission now for 6 years. So I'm going to say this: cancer changes everything, and I've heard those words before I had cancer, and I never understood it, but I understand it fully now. It changes everything. Every minute of every second that I have is valuable. It's important. And I feel I have something to say, and I need to say it. And it's for me. It really is for me, and it is not the ego trip that, the world has to know who I am. It was never about that. But this is for me. This is my expression, and I appreciate life, so I don't take it for granted.
Yeah. Well, Judy Mokowitz, you are an inspiration to not only me, I'm sure to everybody who will be listening to this show. I want to thank you for being on the Susan Brender Show. It's been a total pleasure.
Susan, I enjoyed it so much, and I thank you so very much. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.